Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going way back to ancient China, and
Yeah.
we're going to be looking at a concept from the Tao Te Ching,
Tao Te Ching.
yeah, chapter 32 specifically, all about knowing when to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something, especially today,
Yeah.
that can be really hard. We've
Yeah.
got this culture of like, always be hustling,
Always on.
always be grinding, always be, you know,
Gotta get ahead.
producing more. But what do you think? What does Lao Tzu have to say about all this?
Well, it's so interesting that this text was written thousands of years ago,
Uh-huh.
but it's probably more relevant today than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, this idea that we have to be constantly striving and pushing, it's almost like we've forgotten how to stop. And
Wow.
and I think Lao Tzu saw that even back then. So where do we even begin with this?
Well, Lao Tzu starts off chapter 32 with this
Yeah.
idea of the nameless.
The nameless.
And what is that all about?
Well, think of it this way. Imagine like a block of wood
Yeah.
before it's been carved into anything.
Right. Raw potential.
Exactly. Pure potential. It could become anything. It hasn't been defined or limited yet. And that's kind of what Lao Tzu is getting at with the nameless. It's that state before things have a label.
Before we put it in a box.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this connects to the Tao itself.
Right.
The Tao is this fundamental principle of the universe
Mm-hmm.
that underlies everything.
The source of everything.
Right. But it's also nameless.
Yeah.
Formless. Beyond definition.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
Oh, for sure. But think of it like this. Like potential energy in physics.
Oh.
There's this vast reservoir of energy just waiting to be expressed.
So we start with this idea of the nameless, this pure potential. But then how do we actually like move from that potential into action?
Right. Because we can't just sit around
Yeah.
contemplating the nameless all day.
You got to get things done.
Right, exactly. And that's where this idea of wu wei comes in,
Oh, way.
which is often translated as non-action, non-action.
Or effortless action.
So like doing nothing.
Well, not exactly. It's more about aligning yourself with the natural flow of the universe.
I'm trying to visualize this.
Okay, so think about it like this.
Okay.
Have you ever tried to force something to happen
Oh, yeah.
and it just completely backfired?
Definitely. Like when I try to micromanage,
Exactly.
like it never works out the way I thought it would.
You're pushing against the current.
Yeah.
Wu Wei is about recognizing that sometimes the most effective way to act is to actually let go of control.
Okay, so like riding the wave instead of fighting it.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay.
Trusting the process, letting go of that need to control every little thing.
All right, so how do we actually put this into practice?
Let's say you're leading a team.
Okay.
If you're constantly micromanaging, trying to control every outcome, you're creating resistance.
Huh.
You're working against the natural flow.
Makes sense. But a leader who embodies wu wei, they trust their team, they delegate effectively, and they focus on creating the conditions for success rather than forcing it.
So it's like setting the stage and then getting out of the way.
Exactly. You're creating the right environment, and then you're trusting the process to unfold.
Like a gardener.
Exactly.
You plant the seeds.
Yeah.
You water them. But you can't force them to grow.
It's about working with nature, not against it.
Right. And speaking of nature, Lao Tzu uses this really great analogy of the dew
Oh, yeah.
to illustrate this point. How dew nourishes everything.
Yeah.
Without any effort.
It just happens naturally.
It does.
It's a beautiful image of self-regulation.
And balance.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the nameless, this pure potential. We've got wu wei, this effortless action. But now let's get to the heart of chapter 32, knowing when to stop,
Ah, yeah.
which I think is probably the hardest part,
Oh, absolutely.
especially in today's world,
It goes against everything we're told.
right? Always got to be doing more.
More, more, more.
So how do we actually know when we've reached that point?
When enough is enough.
Yeah.
Well, Lao Tzu uses this beautiful analogy of rivers flowing into the sea.
Okay, I was hoping we'd get to that. Well, let's
Think
get out with that.
Well, the rivers, they represent our individual journeys, our unique paths, our goals, our aspirations. We're all flowing. We're all moving. We're constantly in process.
We're on our way somewhere.
Exactly. But all rivers eventually flow into the sea.
Right, the sea being.
Kind of completion, a natural endpoint.
Ah, I see.
So knowing when to stop is about recognizing when we've reached our own personal sea.
When we've reached that point of completion.
Right.
So if we brought Lao Tzu into 2024 with all of our hustle and grind, what do you think you'd say?
I think he'd probably ask us, where is all this striving getting you?
Is it actually leading you to fulfillment?
Exactly. And that's a question I think we all need to be asking ourselves.
Absolutely.
Where in our lives have we bought into this idea that more is always better?
And how can we find that balance?
How can we embrace the wisdom of knowing when to stop?
Great questions to consider. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Tao Te Ching. And until next time, happy pondering.